There's an email in the Jeffrey Epstein files that should be leading every newscast in America right now. It won't be, because the people who decide what gets coverage have their own reasons for looking the other way. But this email exists. It's documented. It's part of the official record. And what it reveals about the current Attorney General of the United States should terrify every American who still believes that justice means something in this country. The email is addressed to Jeffrey Epstein. It's sent after one of his parties, and it reads, "Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty." The sender's name? Redacted. Covered up, protected by Pam Bondi's Department of Justice. The same Pam Bondi who wears a Christian cross, who calls herself a warrior for justice, who stands at podiums and lectures Americans about law and order. She's protecting the person who wrote those words. She's shielding a documented child predator from accountability, while survivors' names were left exposed in the very same document release. Let that sink in for a moment. Victims who were trafficked as children had their identities revealed. But the person who sent an email bragging about a child being naughty at Jeffrey Epstein's party, that person gets the protection of the United States Department of Justice. That person's name is redacted. That person walks free while Bondi and Trump's DOJ actively work to bury the evidence of their crimes. This isn't just corruption. This isn't just a cover-up. This is the wholesale capture of the justice system by the very people who should be investigated, prosecuted, and imprisoned. Here's what you need to understand about how this works. Jeffrey Epstein didn't stop his criminal enterprise after his first arrest in 2007. He didn't go underground. He didn't become cautious. In fact, all the evidence suggests he became more brazen, more open, more confident that he would never face real consequences. And why wouldn't he be? When he was finally charged, when the evidence against him was overwhelming, when prosecutors had everything they needed to put him away for life. He got a sweetheart deal that let him leave jail during the day to go wherever he wanted and only required him to sleep in a cell at night. That deal was orchestrated by Alex Acosta, who would later serve in Trump's cabinet. And before the FBI could raid his home and seize the blackmail material he had collected, that evidence disappeared. Someone tipped him off. Someone made sure the most damaging footage, the evidence that would implicate the most powerful people, was removed before law enforcement arrived. Epstein didn't fear prosecution because he knew he had leverage over people in positions of power. He had video, he had recordings, he had documentation of crimes committed by billionaires, politicians, and business leaders. That was the entire point of the operation. Get powerful men to commit crimes on camera, then use that footage to ensure they would never move against you. It's the oldest form of control in the world, and it worked perfectly. Even after his 2008 guilty plea to charges involving minors, even after everyone in elite circles knew exactly what he was, the emails kept coming, the invitations kept arriving, and people kept sending their children into his orbit. Consider this. Howard Lutnick's wife, after Epstein had already pleaded guilty to crimes involving children, sent him an email saying they were on a yacht and wanted to stop by his island. She made sure to mention they had a few boys and a few girls with them. Why include those details? Why specify the ages and genders of the children in their party unless you know exactly what Epstein's interests are? And you're signaling that you're willing to provide access. This isn't reading between the lines. This is the text of the email itself, now part of the public record. Or take Ava Dubin, who sent Epstein a message after his conviction inviting him to visit because her teenage daughter Selena would have 5 friends over. What parent invites a convicted sex offender to their home and leads with the fact that their teenage daughter will have friends present? You don't make that offer unless you're trying to curry favor, unless you're using your own child as bait, unless you've decided that proximity to wealth and power is worth more than protecting the young people in your care. Here's where this gets even darker. These emails weren't private communications that got leaked. Epstein kept records of everything. He responded to messages. He documented his activities. He did this all after being arrested, after pleading guilty, after the whole world knew what he was. Why? Because he believed he was untouchable, and the evidence suggests he was right to believe it. The files reveal that Epstein was in regular communication with Peter Thiel, the billionaire tech investor who now has massive government contracts through his company Palantir. In one exchange, Epstein writes to Thiel about return to tribalism counter to globalization and finding things on their way to collapse. Thiel responds asking what he means, and Epstein replies, Brexit, just the beginning. They're not just discussing politics, they're celebrating the dismantling of democratic systems. They're rooting for chaos and collapse because that's when billionaires can consolidate even more power. Peter Thiel, remember, is an immigrant who has publicly stated that he doesn't believe democracy is compatible with freedom. He said that women and poor people shouldn't have the right to vote, and now his company has contracts that likely give him access to vast amounts of data on American citizens. He bought and paid for J.D. Vance, spending millions to get him into the Senate and then into the vice presidency. Vance went from calling Trump America's Hitler to becoming his most loyal defender. Why? Because Thiel told him to. Because Thiel saw an opportunity to place his own puppet in the line of succession to the presidency. And here's the connection that should alarm everyone. Thiel was in regular contact with Jeffrey Epstein, the man who was allegedly working for foreign intelligence services to gather blackmail material on American elites. Poland is currently investigating the possibility that Epstein's entire operation was co-organized by Russian intelligence. Other countries are taking this seriously because they understand that a blackmail network operating at the highest levels of American power is a national security threat. But in the United States, under Pam Bondi's DOJ, the response is to redact names and protect perpetrators. This isn't just a Republican scandal, and we need to be honest about that. Yes, Trump and his allies are the ones currently in power and actively covering up evidence. Yes, Pam Bondi is the one redacting names to protect child predators. But the Epstein files also reveal something deeply troubling about the Democratic establishment that we cannot ignore. Joe Manchin, the former Democratic senator from West Virginia who spent his entire career blocking progressive legislation and siding with corporations over his own constituents, appears in the files. An email discusses arranging a yacht for Senator Manchin and his family through Epstein's network. This is the same Joe Manchin who killed the Build Back Better agenda, who protected coal companies while his constituents died of black lung disease, who voted with Republicans more often than with his own party. And now we know why. He was compromised. He was part of the network. This is why the distinction between corporate Democrats and progressive Democrats matters so much. It's not about purity tests or circular firing squads. It's about understanding that some people with a D next to their name are just as bought and paid for as the Republicans. They'll vote the right way on symbolic issues. They'll say the right things about social progress. But when it comes to the fundamental question of who the system serves, they side with wealth and power every single time. Look at the current Democratic leadership. Chuck Schumer pledging unconditional support for AIPAC. Hakeem Jeffries refusing to whip votes against ICE funding, even as that agency is being used to terrorize communities and suppress votes. Why? Because ICE is a for-profit enterprise. Because Trump's donors own the companies that run the detention centers. Because Palantir has contracts to provide the surveillance technology. It's all connected. It's all about money. And corporate Democrats are just as invested in that system as Republicans are. The progressive wing of the party, people like Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Elizabeth Warren, refuse to take corporate PAC money on principle. They understand that you cannot serve both the people and the donor class. You have to choose. And every single time there's a conflict between what's right and what's profitable, corporate Democrats choose profit. That's why they lose. That's why working class voters don't trust them. Because on some level, everyone can sense that these politicians aren't actually fighting for them. What makes the Epstein scandal so devastating isn't just the crimes themselves. It's the ecosystem of enablement that allowed those crimes to continue for decades. Every person who sent their children to his island, every person who accepted his money, every person who looked the other way because they wanted access to his network, every prosecutor who gave him a sweetheart deal, every FBI agent who let evidence disappear, every journalist who had pieces of this story and never published them because they were afraid of the powerful people who would be implicated. This is how elite criminal enterprises operate. They don't exist in isolation. They require collaboration. They require people in positions of authority who are willing to protect the operation. They require a culture where power is more important than justice, where wealth can buy immunity, where the rules that apply to everyone else simply don't apply if you're connected enough. And here's what should absolutely enrage you. Pam Bondi knows all of this. She has access to all the files. She's seen all the evidence. She knows who wrote that email about Epstein's littlest girl being naughty. She knows who invited him to events after his conviction. She knows which politicians, which billionaires, which business leaders were part of this network. And she's choosing to protect them. She's choosing to redact their names while leaving victims exposed. She's choosing to serve the predators instead of pursuing justice for the people they preyed upon. This is the person Trump chose to lead the Department of Justice, not in spite of her willingness to cover up elite crimes, but because of it. Because Trump himself appears in these files. Because Elon Musk begged for invitations to Epstein's parties. Because Howard Lutnick, who Trump appointed to a cabinet position, had family members reaching out to Epstein. Because Mark Zuckerberg had dinners with Epstein that were described as wild. Because every single person in Trump's inner circle has connections to this network, and they all need protection. Here's where the national security implications become impossible to ignore. Multiple foreign governments believe that Epstein was working for intelligence services, collecting blackmail material on American elites that could be used to manipulate U.S. policy. Whether it was Russia, Israel, or some combination of foreign actors, the result is the same. Some of the most powerful people in America are potentially compromised. They've been photographed, they've been recorded, they've been documented engaging in criminal activity. And now they're making decisions about war, peace, trade policy, and the future of American democracy while potentially under the influence of foreign powers who have evidence of their crimes. Peter Thiel's Palantir has government contracts that give it access to vast amounts of surveillance data. Elon Musk's companies have become essential infrastructure for the US military and intelligence community. Mark Zuckerberg's platforms control how billions of people receive information. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. These aren't just businessmen. These are people who control critical infrastructure, communication systems, and information flows. And every single one of them has connections to Jeffrey Epstein documented in the files. Bernie Sanders said it perfectly. When we talk about authoritarianism, it's not just about Trump. It's about billionaires increasingly controlling what we see, hear, and read. It's about the consolidation of power in the hands of a small number of men who have shown they're willing to collaborate with sex traffickers, who are comfortable discussing the collapse of democratic systems, who see ordinary people as obstacles to their vision of how society should be organized. The cover-up is accelerating. Files are being deleted in real time. Names are being redacted. Evidence is disappearing. But the truth is already out there. Researchers have been documenting these files. Journalists have been archiving the evidence. The information exists, and it can't be completely erased no matter how hard Bondi and the Trump DOJ try. The question is what happens next. Will there be accountability? Will anyone in a position of power actually investigate these crimes and pursue justice for the victims? Or will the system continue to protect the powerful while punishing the vulnerable? Right now, the answer looks grim. With Republicans controlling all three branches of government, with corporate Democrats too compromised to mount effective resistance, with the media largely treating this as just another scandal rather than the systematic corruption of American institutions, the prospects for accountability seem remote. But here's what we know from history. Cover-ups fail when people refuse to look away. When enough citizens demand answers, when researchers keep documenting the evidence, when journalists keep investigating despite pressure to move on, the truth eventually comes out. It may take years, it may require political change, it may demand a complete reckoning with how power operates in America, but it can happen. The Epstein files aren't just about one man's crimes. They're about a system that protected those crimes for decades. They're about an elite class that believes laws don't apply to them. They're about politicians who serve donors instead of constituents. They're about law enforcement agencies that prioritize protecting the powerful over pursuing justice. And they're about a moment in American history when all of those failures are being exposed simultaneously. Pam Bondi standing at a podium wearing her Christian cross while protecting child predators is more than hypocrisy. It's a symbol of how completely corrupted our institutions have become. The Department of Justice isn't pursuing justice. It's providing cover for crimes. The people who are supposed to protect children are instead protecting their abusers. And the entire apparatus of government is being used not to serve the public, but to shield the powerful from consequences. This is what authoritarianism looks like. Not jackboots and armbands, but respected officials in positions of authority quietly redacting names, deleting files, and ensuring that the people who should be in prison are instead making policy. It's a system where justice is for sale, where the law is selectively enforced, where your ability to escape consequences depends entirely on your wealth and connections. And every single day this continues, the message gets clearer. If you're powerful enough, if you're connected enough, if you're wealthy enough, you can commit any crime and walk away. You can traffic children and have the Attorney General protect your identity. You can collaborate with foreign intelligence services and end up in the cabinet. You can accumulate blackmail material on American leaders and use it to shape policy. None of it matters if you're part of the club. That's not a democracy. That's an oligarchy with democratic window dressing. And the Epstein files are showing us exactly how it operates and who benefits from keeping it in place. This story is far from over. More information will come out. More connections will be documented. More evidence of the systematic protection of elite predators will emerge. The question is whether we'll pay attention, whether we'll demand accountability, whether we'll recognize that this isn't just about Jeffrey Epstein or Pam Bondi or any individual scandal, but about whether we're going to accept a system where power places you above the law. The victims of Epstein's network deserve justice. The American people deserve a government that serves them rather than protecting criminals. And democracy itself depends on the principle that no one, regardless of wealth or position, is above accountability. Pam Bondi is protecting child predators. That's not speculation. That's not hyperbole. That's what the evidence shows. She has the names. She has the emails. She has the documentation. And she's choosing to keep them hidden while claiming to be a warrior for justice. Remember that. Remember who she's protecting and who she's serving. Because this is the moment when we decide whether we're going to accept this or whether we're going to demand something better. The files exist. The evidence is real. The cover-up is happening right now. What we do next will determine whether any of it matters. Stay informed, stay engaged, and don't let them memory hole this story. Because the moment we accept this as normal is the moment we lose everything that makes democracy worth fighting for.